Yo, what's up, guys? Talking about Giants Abyss Heart with the fastest team on Teshar. You might be wondering, like, why are you making a video on this again? Well, that's because I slightly changed my team. I optimized it on like a few points, and I've been getting some questions like, oh, how are the runes? How is this looking like? Like, how does it work? Do you need the Deborah? Do you need this? And it's pretty much a team that I already showcased, but it's better for rune quality right now, or more precise for rune quality. Let's actually call it like that. So I just wanted to do a video that was just showcasing this team and then saying like, okay, OP runes, hard to make. Probably most people cannot really make this, but people want to see this, like how it works, and then just show the runes on that and that kind of stuff. But then I thought, nah, I should do it a little bit more useful for you guys and then actually give you some tips how you can improve your giant speed team with the Teshar. So there are a few ways that you can actually improve this team based on like making Homunculus, trying to get in perfect AI, specific artifact tuning, how that's better, the skins, what other runes you could use. Sometimes this run just goes to shit as well. That's mainly because Teshar decided to use a dumb skill and then Homunculus decided to use a dumb skill. But this is averaging for like 23 to 24 second average. Of course, the moment I start recording, you have like a full on derpy run. But the main thing about this team, what I managed to do right now, was that the Teshar can one-shot middle boss. You do need a Deborah for that. So is this video going to be all about like, oh, you need a Deborah, otherwise this whole video is useless for you? No, not really. I'm going to give tips for pretty much all kinds of homunculus teams with the Teshar, or pretty much just Teshar teams in general. And after that, I'm going to showcase the runes on this, like how you could recreate this if you actually have good rage runes. You might say like, okay, we don't have as good rage runes as you. Well, to be honest, I barely farm Necro. So people that farm the Ancient on Rage, that kind of stuff, they definitely have better rage runes than I do. Plus, I would say that this thing is almost more about having good fight runes, good intangible runes, which we're going to talk about in a second as well, rather than like super good rage runes. So like as you can see there, I even missed stuff over there. Plus the rage runes that I have are actually good for crit rate, not for crit damage. And the rage runes that I use over here are high on crit damage rather than high crit rate. Plus, you have to keep in mind broken sets. Broken sets are very important. So first of all, first thing to talk about. Skins. Skins is definitely a question I get all the time. Like, what skin is faster for who, where, when, and what kind of skin should I use? Well, I can give you a heads up, you're probably already doing it right. The fastest skin for Teshar is the base skin. I actually had that wrong. Genesis Prime actually notified me on that one. I was using the RTA skin for Teshar, but the RTA skin for Teshar is slightly slower on the skill 3. Base skin Teshar is the fastest on the skill 3. The RTA skin of Teshar is slightly faster on the S2. However, it doesn't really change all too much. And these runs, like these units decided not to land jack shit right now. So it's also this tricky thing where sometimes it just goes to shit and nothing properly lands and whatever. But you know how that works. So yeah, Teshar base skin. That's the fast skin. Then we're going for the Homunculus. If you have the Homunculus in there, what's the fast skin on Homunculus? Well, funny enough, Homunculus doesn't change his skill animations by the skin. He only changes his looks by the skin. Probably because they were slightly lazy and they didn't want to change, like, I don't know how many skills an Homunculus has on each different element. Because a lot of, like, keep in mind, like, a lot of the skins they release, like the Valkyrie skins that they're gonna release, like half of the family doesn't have a skill 3, right? So that's pretty easy. Homunculus technically has a lot of skills because you have 4 different trees for pretty much all skills that it has. Well, except the first skill, I guess. But still, then there's a lot of skills to each element. If you would have to redo all of these animations, it would be a lot of work for all of the skins. So that's probably also the reason why they don't really bring out more Homunculus skins than they have right now. But that is it for skins. How do you get Homunculus into the perfect AI range, though? Well, that for you maybe need Deborah, but if you use another unit, it might be workable as well. But as you can see that my Homunculus, if my Teshar uses some decent-ish skills, doesn't even have to be like very good skills. I think it can just go double S1. Well, double S1 maybe not, but if it goes S1, S2 or S2, S1, as we can see over here, goes for an S1, and in this case goes for an S2, that is perfect AI range for the Homunculus to always use its S3. That is something that's very nice. If you get to that point, you get very fast runs. Like it's 24 seconds runs, like straight up, and it's super fast. Fastest I've seen on this team is about 21.5 second team. And that is just mainly for getting your Teshar to do as much damage as possible. And that's also what I noticed. Like the biggest speed improvement on this whole dungeon for me personally was doing the Teshar, like making the Teshar do an insane amount of damage. And for that, we actually have to look at like how things are runed and how things are working. So let's dive into the runes a little bit, and I'll do like a full showcase of all of the runes of all of the units afterwards. So yes, we can see here like 22.9. So that's, it can still go fast on that. Like 21.5 is like the fast I can get. So what is this Teshar looking like at the moment? So my Teshar is a lot of attack, decent amount of crit damage, low on crit rate. And you might be asking us like, okay, why is that so low on crit rate? Because that crit rate does not add up to 100 on the side crystals. Well, my Teshar does that much damage that I only need to crit the side crystals once. I can miss critter on the second time, and I would still kill the side crystals. I just noticed that this pretty much, it doesn't make any things fail any times more. But for me, making the run faster where I can kill the mid boss in one full go, which is more likely to happen like this, and the double miss crit is very unlikely to happen. I would need like a little bit more crit rate. But it is something that you can actually get away with. So Teshar, you could actually make on 52 crit rate. I would still say the higher the better, because the closer you are to 100 crit rate on the side crystals, the better it is. The closer you are to 85 crit rate on the side crystals, the worse it is. Because you get like, of course, the 33 from the lead, but then you have the elemental advantage on the normal boss and like the golems and that kind of stuff, but not on the side crystals. So this is technically on a 90 crit rate for the crystals. So a double 90% is very likely to just hit. If it doesn't fully hit, yeah, then the Homunculus has to take a skill. But I noticed it barely happening, and it did actually improve my speed of like overall averages to lower the crit rate on this. Because of that, I could do like a few other things. Like if you can not necessarily maybe push your Teshar to kill the mid boss right away, because that was the thing that made it faster for me. But if you can push your Teshar to do enough damage where the Homunculus always picks up a skill 3 or skill 2, that would speed up your run by quite a lot as well. So those are kind of the things that you're aiming for by lowering crit rate, and that's maybe something you play around with. Another very interesting thing is, and that's a thing that a lot of people overlook, broken sets are the best runes for a lot of dungeons. Because sure, I have like some decent rage runes in there, but this rage rune is a 5-star. This rage rune is kind of shit. This rage rune, it has the correct stats and stuff, but technically this is just pretty much a maxed out blue, like a little bit more than a maxed out blue. So these rage runes are definitely not good. Sure, this one is pretty good. This one is pretty good, but it's all about those flat stats. Like these flat stats in here add so much more stats. And this one as well, 33 crit damage with an 8 in here. This adds a lot more stats, and really focus on those broken sets to get your Teshar to do as much damage as possible. In general, just your dungeon teams, just focus on those broken sets. How do you find those broken sets best? Well, it's just using the Summoner's War Rune Optimizer. That's the only way, because you're not going to be actively, like if you're scrolling through your box, you're going to end up with Rage Blade, like to be honest. But if you need this little crit rate, you're probably not going to need Blade for it. So definitely do use the Optimizer to get those things in. Another thing is artifacts. And artifacts are really specific, like, okay, what kind of artifacts do you want on which unit in this whole team? I'm gonna look at about artifacts in a second, but first I want to address something else, and that is fight runes / intangible runes. So what does that mean? Well, as you can see, I have all of my other units on fight. Prilia is triple fight, the Economia is triple fight, the Homunculus is triple fight, and then this thing is also triple fight. But you probably also notice something as well. This one has an intangible rune in there. This one has an intangible rune in there. This one does have an intangible rune in there. And this one also does have an intangible rune in there. My intangible runes are 9 out of 10 ending up as fight runes. Those are probably the easiest one to replace for, like, I don't have super great fight runes. I have usable fight runes, but they are not super great. So any of the intangible runes that you can get, always keep in mind, can this be a fight rune? Sure, you can only use one intangible rune for a fight set on that thing, so you still need like 5 other fight runes. But it's definitely very useful to get those runes in. And then once again, you have to use the Summoner's War Rune Optimizer to actually get this in like the easiest way. Like, how would I do most damage on like a triple fight set while also using intangible and that kind of stuff? It's the easiest way to do that. And in the end, my fight runes are not really that great, but they're workable and they're good enough to actually get a damage set like this. And this is all that my Homunculus needs to actually kill the boss on the final stage. So definitely do check out if you can make your whole team on fight sets. Maybe the Homunculus is the more difficult one, but maybe you have 2 damage dealers in here. let's say you have 2 damage dealers rather than a Deborah in here. You could also think about putting another bird in here, so putting a bird on this slot, and then having your homunculus move twice as well, which does mean that you have another option for triple fight. Or let's say that you place in the Lin over here. Lin only has good scaling on crit damage. You might have like decent crit damage fight runes. You put the Lin on fight runes, and then you put this one on like some rage runes. So those are like a lot of options that you could still check. Like, okay, I have these 2 units on double fight for sure. Then you have these 2 units. Can you maybe place them on fight as well? If you have some decent fights, you could. If not, check that you maybe do one or 2 on fight. And you could check like, okay, maybe I don't need 2 damage dealers, but how about I put a Theon in here and I go for the double bird in here. So this bird boosts that, and this bird will boost the homunculus. So therefore you add in like 3 more extra fight runes, and try to check to get those intangible fight runes in there, because they're actually really good. Then talking about artifacts. So for artifacts, what do you want to aim for? Well, all of the units that move early, you want crit damage is max. That's the main thing that you want to do. Sure, of course, very main thing is damage on water. But after the damage on water, then you're looking at crit damage max. I am going to make a video to explain all of the artifact lines, because I still know that there's some confusion about those. But that's a video for tomorrow, I think, or like a day later. Then I also tried a lot of artifacts on the right side and was figuring out what does give me the best artifact on my Teshar. And I was thinking about like, okay, crit damage skill 2, very useful. Crit damage skill 3, very useful. Crit damage is max, very useful. First skill crit damage, not really that useful, I guess. And own skill crit damage or single target 1 turn crit damage, also not that useful, because it works on the first hit but not on the second hit. So what in the end was the best artifact for this was actually a combination line. And that's what you gotta be looking for as well. Because you could say like, oh, I have a 23 crit damage skill 2, and that ends up on like just a good amount of damage. But I can already tell you that 23 crit damage S2 is not gonna be better than this artifact. Because this artifact, technically how you should count it, it's not exactly like that, but I would just plus all of these numbers. So we got a 10 over here, 20 over here, 37 over there. It's not exactly that, because you're not going to be damaged at full HP. You're not always just going to do first skill. You're not always going to hit on your own target, blah, blah, or just single target. That is very true, so maybe you subtract a little bit from that, but you can kind of plus all of these numbers and then compare it to your 23. So let's say we take 75% of this, which is going to be 27, and that is still higher than your 23 on just crit damage skill 2, for example, right? So there's a bunch of things that you just want to keep in mind. Combination lines is probably the way to go. Same thing for this. Like, sure, I have high damage on water, but it's still combination lines. Also for the other units, Prilia, well, damage on water, very simple, but crit damage max is the main thing because she's always moving first. Same thing over here, crit damage max is the main thing to go. The individual crit damages, you don't really know exactly which skill she's gonna do. So for that reason, first skill crit damage is also slightly less interesting because she mostly has a multi-hit in the S1 and the S2, which are the higher damage hits. But crit damage max is definitely the way to go for her. Then we have for the homunculus, once again, you just want to go damage on water. And then actually you want to go crit damage low rather than crit damage max. But in this case, I have crit damage max on it. But in this one, it is a crit damage low. And this line is not going to help at all, but it's just used on different artifacts. So I didn't really want to change it. But specifically for him, this is not going to help unless I would have like a Theon move afterwards if I didn't use Deborah, for example. But this one you want to go crit damage low. Why? Because it's mainly moving the moment that the boss is already at a pretty low HP. Then for this one, well, you just go like reduction of water and then some healing improvement or so. And this thing doesn't really matter all too much. So I got reduction of water and also some damage increases, but it doesn't really do too much damage anymore. Quickly going over all of the runes of these units. The minimum speed of Teshar is a 47. So I could lower one speed, but don't go any lower than that. We have the Prilia, the minimum speed is 84. So keep that in mind. Minimum crit rate is 52. Minimum crit rate on Teshar is technically 52, with a minimum that would be best for it is a 67. But if you have 52, it's not a bad thing. It's definitely something that would still work if you can add a lot more damage to it. If you happen to have like a lot of these kind of runes with not that much crit rate in there, or maybe in some other slots, do try it out. It might actually be better for you. This one is just in tune to move right after the Teshar. It has a little bit of crit rate, crit damage, it doesn't really care about. It's just the tanky stats and being in tune. This one is a minimum of plus 53 or even 52. I'm not exactly sure. I think it's actually 52 to outspeed the things at the middle as well, because then you're at the 169 combat speed. Minimum crit rate 52. And then just try to add in quite some crit damage, but don't forget about the attack. The attack is still important. It does have damage enemy max HP scaling, but attack is still pretty useful on this unit as well. If you can, a little bit of crit rate or if you can, a little bit of accuracy definitely does help on this unit as well. And therefore it might make runs a little bit safer if Prilia decided to. This one is pretty straightforward. It's just, I added in like a bunch of stats. I'm not really sure. It just has to be slower than the Homunculus. If you use something else after the Homunculus, then it would just be like slightly slower than the Homunculus, still faster than the 169 combat speed. So this one technically is, because it's 155 that would plus the 15 of the speed tower. So you add up at the 169 at least. It's 170 actually in this case. So just keep those things in mind. To recap, use the right skins. Try to get the Homunculus in perfect AI range, which is about like 35% of the boss HP, and then you will always do the skill 2 and the skill 3. Checking out the crit rate on Teshar, maybe you can actually lower it some by improving the Teshar damage a lot, that you can get closer to the perfect AI range of the Homunculus. And definitely check out the intangible runes, the fight runes, but also the broken sets on Teshar, or broken sets on the Homunculus if you use it over there. And check out the right artifacts, that you're using the right artifacts to do as much damage. And with all of those tips, you can probably improve your Giants team to get slightly faster average on it. And in the end, I think most people are farming Giants these days, because I think it's the highest value dungeon out there. So definitely a few tips on Giants farming to make that faster is useful. So guys, thanks a lot for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like this video and subscribe to the channel. It definitely helps me out. Still trying to aim for that 50k. Hope you enjoy, and see you as always in the next one.